Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis News from December 4th to the 10th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it, as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. Try to think of these videos as a time capsule. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the US cannabis industry, identify top US MSOs that you keep seeing pop up that you think will be worth more in the future than they are now based on their current market caps, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so, of course pending whatever incremental reform we're supposed to get from now until the 2024 election. That being said, this is not advice, and as always, plan accordingly for your own situation, but as someone with skin in the game who's watched it happen in 2018 and 2021, when the flip does switch, there's a ton of wealth that is created, so you might as well learn how to take advantage to help yourself, your family, and your community going forward. Now, that being said, this is one of the big stories this week, not the biggest at all, but the report that HHS sent to DEA has been released, and like 240 of the 250 pages are redacted, which is so frustrating because for once, it's like the US government actually demonstrating that they can change their mind when presented with new information, and the fact that they're hiding this new science is even more troubling. All that to say, we can speculate all we want, but great post down here from Black Widow Farms reminding us how the feds have been playing both sides of the situation for decades as the HHS holds a patent on cannabinoids as antioxidants and neuroprotectants. Now you understand the problem, and so it's always good to remember this. I mean, sort of been in the back of my head and one thing I've known, but to be reminded, National Library of Science, here it is, read it and weep. The grant was presented in 2003, and so why has this taken so long, and why can't the government admit that cannabis is a medicine while the HHS itself holds a patent for cannabinoids? A lot of questions I don't have the answers to, and I'd love to find them out. If you know more, let me know in the comments. But fact is, the government has acknowledged that cannabis clearly has medicinal value a long time ago, but will they finally come out of the closet, and publicly state cannabis is the medicine it is, and it ought to at least go to Schedule 3. That's what we're all waiting on, folks. But with that, some big news as of today. New York regulators greenlight rec market entrance of 6 medical cannabis behemoths who will have to reserve 50% of their shelf space for brands they don't own. That's going to make it harder to compete with the 2,000 illicit shops. And I'm being nice by saying 2,000. There's likely a lot more. Because while this is great news, and half the dozen that got the green light from the State Cannabis Control Board are Columbia Care, Curaleaf, Etain, owned by Riv, New York Canna, owned by Acreage, PharmaCann, I forget who owns a big stake in them, and then Valley Agroceuticals, which is owned by Cresco, and I didn't know Cresco was originally part of the MSOs that would be awarded, so that's nice to hear. But the main thing is they'll only get to open one dispensary to start out of one of their existing medicals to sell adult use on December 29th. And then ultimately those 6 companies will be permitted to set up co-located rec sales at up to 3 of their existing med dispensaries, but for the time being, they only get to open the one by the end of the month. So it's certainly not going to drive a ton of sales, especially when there's so much illicit cannabis at much cheaper prices where people can buy much larger quantities. Well, these 4 other operators apparently weren't mentioned. However, technically they are eligible to apply for the transfer into rec market as well, so no doubt they'll likely do that. That includes Green Thumb, which was surprising that Green Thumb wasn't on the top list. Goodness Growth as well, Vireo, and then MedMen and Sativa Medical, owned by Ianthus. But so you can pause to read quite a bit of detail, just highlighting the first shops where Columbia Care is going to open at its Brooklyn one for adult use, Curaleaf at its Newburgh dispensary for adult use. The rest listed here, except Cresco did not mention where they're going to start. So I invite you to pause to read. Otherwise, just a bit more on the applications, especially those social equity entrepreneurs, those awarded the CAURD licenses, over 400 of them. That stay was lifted last week, so I believe they'll be able to go through the process of opening up their dispensaries too, jumping through all the hoops and all that. And so lots of change coming, but steps in the right direction for New York at least. So full link in the comments. But just to highlight a little bit from the companies, or a few of the companies that put out press releases, Cannabis is very happy to approve adult use and be able to begin wholesale, I imagine, and retail in New York. And so they're putting out a press release, and I'm just very happy that I scooped up some cheap shares of Columbia Care when I did a few weeks back. And so, of course, this is not advice, but just leaving this here if you wanted to pause to read what they've got going on in New York. While another MSO, Boris Jordan, a vocal one of the founders of this industry, essentially, of Curaleaf. Big day in our state, highlighting as soon as next week. No, as soon as December 29th, unfortunately, seems to be the case. But nonetheless, great for Curaleaf as well. He'll be able to sell through there. Well, I just wanted to add this in here because this news did come out this past week. On the 7th, Curaleaf announces receipt of conditional approval to list on subordinate voting shares on the TSX. So conditional approval, final approval is still needed. Then they'll issue a press release with the dates when that comes to be. But just wanted to let you all know that is where Curaleaf is at in their TSX uplisting. And so while that was great news, we also got this even bigger news, as in an even bigger turn of events, because just last week, the Ohio Senate leader was saying that, yeah, we're going to try and overturn what everyone in Ohio voted for on November 7th. Like, no, fuck you. Well, we got punked as Ohio Senate approves bill to allow cannabis sales from dispensaries immediately. That's not true, so they should certainly fix this title. Apparently it's going to be 90 days, but still certainly better than waiting until next August, and that's coming in the next source we'll get to, but keep home grow and expunge records. And so big swing as Ohio gets everything and more ultimately. And so this is from Marijuana Moment. Just going to share this here. I invite you to grab the link in the comments if you want to pause to read. At least they do highlight the reality down here as opposed to the title immediately. Like, I'm pretty sure med dispensaries still have to wait 90 days to be able to sell adult use. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this source I did find explained it a little bit better, as in general, this House bill was passed, enables the cultivation of up to 6 plants per household for personal use. Great job, everyone in Ohio. You guys getting more than what you bargained for. In addition, some more included here, but yeah, main thing, the original law predicted a 9-month waiting period, but the new amendment will allow purchases as early as 90 days from now. The change that is anticipated to more quickly address the illicit market. Because yeah, if you don't have a legal market, you're gonna foster a black market. No shit. Some more details here if you wanted to pause to read. Well, I got this update out of Illinois. Thank you, Dennis Ruda, for sharing this one, as November sales actually surpassed October sales, which is a rare sight. 139.1 million, up from 138 million the month before. Mind you, 105.5 million came from Illinois residents, 33.6 million outside of Illinois coming in and willing to pay the taxes to the state. Now, main thing that they want to highlight here is that most products ever sold. Now, that's kind of been the thing every single month, though. So I invite you to pause to read if you're interested. Just highlighting the 2 snippets here about Illinois and the progress they've made there. But the raw data from the state, updated as of December 4th, 2023. Main thing is that we can see every month pretty much this year. Yeah, they've set a record since March. Every month has been a record of new items sold, essentially. And so definitely think December will break the 150 million mark, just based on November to December last year, and the fact that those extra 185 social equity dispensaries, I don't know how many have been open, but I think it might have been 2 or 3 months ago that there was like 27 or something like that. So I imagine we will break the 150 in December. I'm going to call it, and I will be excited to share that once we move through in January. But with that out of Florida, OMMU weekly update December 1st to the 7th, 2023. This past week, we got the market share leaders for flower here. THC market share. Whoa, he's grouped it by photos. Interesting. CBD market share. Qualified patient count up to 862,824, which represents a week-over-week increase of just 669. That slowed down quite a bit, so not ideal to see. While Air Cannabis Dispensary opened new location in Leesburg, and Green Thumb opened another one in Port Orange. And so interesting. Okay, so I'm sure I can still click on one of these images and go through them all. Yeah, so here are the images for y'all. Total flower sales by ounces by company. Total THC sales, milligrams by company. Total CBD sales, milligrams by company. Pause to read if you like. And then total dispensing locations by company. Pause to read. And then with that, from New Mexico, 2023 cannabis sales, including November, which actually saw a decline from October, which is the first in quite a few months. But November sales were down about 230K and change, while medical sales in November actually jumped by about 25K. And so regardless, the data in all the states highlight that Americans want to vote for legal cannabis with their dollars if given the opportunity. And they've been at it in New Mexico since April 2022. But main thing as well is where medical cannabis and then eventually rec cannabis is legal, you see med sales go down and rec sales go up just because cannabis itself is the medicine. There's no differentiation between adult use or medicinal. All that to say, next one from Marijuana Moment, unfortunately, but we finally get back to that report that irks and infuriates us so much, detailing cannabis's medical value that they don't want to show us. You know, maybe they're going to deschedule it. We can dream, right? I doubt it. But pause to read if you're interested. Main thing to bring you down to is In summary, in response to the Freedom of Information Act request, so embarrassing, HHS reviewed 252 pages of records, releasing just 2 pages in their entirety. Another 236 were redacted in part, while 14 pages were withheld completely. All the released documents are embedded at the end of this article, and we're going to get to that next. But main thing to highlight is the current review is largely focused on modern scientific considerations on whether, what does this word need to have? Why does this have to be there? On whether cannabis has a currently accepted medical use, which clearly it does, and on no new epidemiological data related to the abuse of cannabis in the years since the 2015 HHS evaluation of cannabis under the CSA's 8-factor analysis. And considering HHS has had a patent since 2003 and they couldn't find medical value in 2015, it's pretty fucking troubling, leading us to believe they might not be able to find it still. And they can only be doing that on purpose, really. I'm just thinking out loud, and I hope I'm fucking wrong. But more here if you want to pause to read, otherwise full link in the comments. But we're going to get to this report. Read it and weep. Like, why would this be redacted if they're following the actual science? It would only lead us to believe they might continue following the political science if it's not. And while I say that, again, I hope I'm wrong, just thinking out loud, but like, how embarrassing is this? Especially from a dude that dresses as a woman and wants to encourage kids to castrate themselves. Unacceptable. And so I don't know how we've gotten to where we're at. Mind you, let's just hope that we get this announcement sooner rather than later. But most of the document is just like this. It's crazy. Grab the full link in the comments, of course, if you want to go through that. But yep, imagine that. That is what we're up against. Now, I guess I have to do the government's job for them, or at least try and spread some awareness from Wiley Online Library. Some studies to highlight, the little bit of data we can gather while cannabis is stuck in the Schedule 1 classification, where it has never belonged in the first place and falsely been in there for the last 7 years, but an observational study of clinical outcome measures in patients treated with cannabis-based medicinal products on the UK Medicinal Cannabis Registry. So first published December 6th. I'll invite you to pause to read the whole thing. They're mainly looking at changes in health-related quality of life in patients prescribed a homogeneous selection of cannabis-based medicinal products. And so think about this. Isn't this sort of the best anecdotal evidence we can get, since we can't do large-scale studies because of the, again, false classification? Basically people saying like, hey, I've been using cannabis and it's really helped me. Because obviously people don't want to take anecdotal evidence as really powerful stuff, but when you have so many people saying it's helped them, and I'm just a person whose cannabis has helped a ton, it is what it is, right? But conclusion, there was an associated improvement in self-reported anxiety, sleep quality, health-related quality of life in patients treated with CBMPs. Those prescribed treatment formulations, including dried flower, were most likely to show a clinical improvement. Flower's king. However, these results must be interpreted with caution given the limited study design, or the limitations of the study design. And again, why are the study designs limited? Because it's stuck in the Schedule 1. It's a fucking feedback loop of hell, right? I don't even want to get into it. But BMC, Journal of Cannabis Research, Cannabis Use for Exercise Recovery in Trained Individuals. Again, a survey study, because that's really all we can gather. But this is an older one from August. Main thing is it was looking at how individuals who are using cannabis and THC as a means of recovery from aerobic or resistance exercise. And I train jiu-jitsu and use cannabis, so I've got some testimony, but again, what does my word mean, right? Conclusions: individuals who habitually use cannabis, CBD or THC, and regularly engage in exercise do feel that cannabis assists them with exercise recovery, as I feel like it does with me too. So what do you know? It is what it is. More data are, of course, necessary, and we'd love to get to that point. The good news is that the DEA has to answer HHS, so at some point we're going to get something. And if it ain't Schedule 3, we got a riot. But main thing is the data doesn't lie here. 72% of participants participated in both types of exercise. 93% of participants felt that CBD assisted them with recovery, while 87% felt the same regarding THC use. 87 and 93. That's not like 52% and 55%. Like, that's pretty darn high. And so I bet these are better quality individuals as well than those that don't smoke, based on a lot of the studies highlighting that better quality individuals tend to use cannabis, have more empathy, and are better at a lot of other things. I digress. Marijuana moment. As study finds, no evidence that medical cannabis causes cognitive impairment in patients with chronic health problems. Read it and weep. We love more data to shut the prohibitionists up, and we've seen many studies that imply this as well, and that they actually function better neurocognitively if you happen to consume cannabis. Findings of a study examining the effects suggest that prescribed medical cannabis may have minimal acute impact on cognitive function among patients with chronic health conditions, which is even better, helping them get off some of the other pills that they likely don't need, and just using cannabis as a natural remedy, which may come as a relief to long-term cannabis patients who are concerned about the potential neurological drawbacks of the drug. That's the difference between cannabis users and non-cannabis users. We don't think about it as a drug. Therefore, we're not worried about the neurological effects because we're good. man, just to each and everyone's own. Authors of the report published last month highlighted what's in the title, essentially, to conduct the study. Again, small sample size, because that's all we can do now while cannabis is stuck in hell where it never belonged. Researchers had 40 people in Australia self-administer a single dose of medical cannabis, and they were tested on an array of neuropsychological metrics and surveyed on their subjective experience. And then their findings: the absence of evidence for cognitive impairment following medical cannabis self-administration was surprising. The researchers say, why? Given prior and substantive evidence that non-medical rec cannabis use reliably impairs a range of cognitive functions. Where is the substantive evidence of this that's not just bullshit studies? I'd love to see them. At the same time, these findings are consistent with 2 systemic reviews published in the last year that suggest that medical cannabis, when used regularly and consistently, in moderation, obviously, for a chronic health concern, may have little, if any, impact on cognitive function. Yeah, no shit. So, another study. Love it. Full link in the comments if you want to go through that. While cannabis moment, states where cannabis is illegal, get this, typically see higher rates of treatment admissions, likely because there's no education, or maybe the cannabis is tainted with some other substance. I don't know if that's a thing, just because in Canada that's never been a thing where you get cannabis mixed with other stuff. But hey, federal study highlights that federal prohibition is a joke, right? States where cannabis is legal for adult use aren't seeing this, and so you're making your own argument, for fuck's sakes. On top of that, obviously more harmful substances are also put in other substances, unfortunately, when the war on drugs continues to be the war on people that it is, which is really sad. So I didn't plan to spend too much time getting into this one, as the title speaks for itself, but more here if you wanted to pause to read. And yeah, just the farce of cannabis prohibition being exposed right here, right before our very own eyes. We love the data piling up. And so with that, another one from Research Square: cannabidiol and fluorinated derivative anti-cancer properties against glioblastoma, multiforme cell lines, and synergy with imidazotetrazine agents. Now, I don't know what these are necessarily. Not trying to be a scientist, just trying to share potential reasoning as to why we should have descheduled a long time ago so we can research more of these potential medical findings for all the benefits. But main thing, pause to read the abstract for the backgrounds, methods, and results if you're interested. But this was essentially aiming to figure out if something helped reduce cancer cells. And so, conclusion, the work demonstrates the anti-cancer activity of A''F'-CBD and the synergy of cannabinoids with these agents. Now, I don't know what these are, and so if you happen to have a better understanding and wouldn't mind letting me know in the comments, it would be much appreciated. For the first time, and expands the understanding of CBD mechanism of action. What do you know? A study helps researchers understand better the mechanism that CBD works. So again, more reason why we need more studies, and we need bigger studies and the ability to do more. But again, the big word here is anti-cancer. How is cannabis still a Schedule I substance? Especially when HHS has had the patent since 2003, right? You cannot make this shit up. It's criminal at this point. So, well, lastly, we saved the best for last because this one's a bit of a farce of a study, but it actually highlights a lot of great things depending on what you know about cannabis. And so we're going to pick this one apart as rising cannabis use among older Americans during the pandemic. Yeah, no shit. That 2.5 years of hell that we were put through is enough to snap anyone out of the matrix, wake them up, red pill them to follow the money, and realize we've been getting fucked over for a long time and it's got to stop. As new study reveals an increase in cannabis use among older Americans. I'm sure this is a survey that just asked people, and it turns out 12% more reported THC-containing substances, in 2023 versus 2024, something like that. And it seems like this idiot researcher wants to try and take that and make this correlation. The study highlights a connection between high-risk alcohol consumption and increased cannabis use in this age group. Now, I could be wrong. I'm just thinking out loud, but I just want to ask you, how many alcoholics do you know that if they were to turn to cannabis in any sort of way, got worse as opposed to maybe weaning themselves off of alcohol and actually getting better? Because the key fact down here, which number 2 I find hilarious, high-risk alcohol consumers, I think of this as like a habitual alcoholic, are more likely to use cannabis, posing potential health risks. What is the biggest health risk to a high-risk alcohol consumer? It sure ain't fucking cannabis. It's the alcohol. And the fact that they could be introduced to cannabis is a tiny chance that they might actually wean themselves off their alcohol problem and turn to something that's a much healthier substance. And so, fuck this researcher. Again, that's just my opinion based on my life experience and how I can't mix alcohol with weed. And a day after drinking, I like to party and have fun when I party. But the next day I'm like, oh my God, I feel terrible. I never want to drink again. And I use cannabis to nurse me back to health. So it is what it is. Let me know in the comments if you disagree completely or not. But number 3, healthcare providers should screen for cannabis use, especially in dual substance users, and address potential interactions with medications. Basically, all this person is saying, you should tell your healthcare provider all of your addictions and problems so that we can try and give you more medications and keep you drugged up and coming back to us for more. So, hey, keep yourselves healthy. Try never to go to a doctor if you don't have to. Exercise, sleeping, eating well, drinking lots of water. That's all you need. But guess what? I saved the best part for last, because after all of this, do you want to know who funded the study and gave Ann Fernandez her fucking money, and this is the best that she could come up with? You're not going to believe it. In addition to the poll funding, Fernandez has research funding from the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. And so, yeah, in the study, cannabis is the fucking problem, right? You cannot make this shit up. And get this, I should say. Older adults who said they were unemployed, those who said they were unmarried and had no partner, and those who said they drank alcohol. So not only those who drank alcohol, but they had to be unemployed, they had to be unmarried, and they had to have no partner. They had to, unfortunately, throughout their lives, choose to be the type of person that would end up alone, sadly, are more likely to say that they use cannabis. And again, if we've got a lot of data that points out that these people might actually save their lives by turning to cannabis. So fuck you, Ann Fernandez. Some horse shit. And so on to some legislative news from Do the Right Thing. Joyce revamps States Act to allow interstate commerce and give FDA regulatory authority. And this news dropped midday Thursday. While Politico was one of the few outlets I saw actually covering it, this one is behind a paywall. So full links in the comments. Fortunately, you might not have access to that. So we've got another story, MJ Biz Daily, highlighting as bipartisan cannabis descheduling bill reintroduced in Congress. And it seems like, why would the DEA and HHS go through all that if this had a chance, right? Which it likely doesn't. And while we can all hope for descheduling and dream and wish, Schedule 3 is much more likely. Although, still possible that the Supreme Court can rule the current status unconstitutional and demand action. Again, that'd just be dreaming at this point. But all that to say, the new States Act, if it were to be passed, this is what could happen. And so don't think this really has any chance, although it is new and it certainly adds to the momentum. Another tool is getting thrown in there. But with that, from Do the Right Thing, the Senate Banking Committee hearing went under the radar today. Apparently this week, December 6th, was a Wednesday. Don Murphy, where have you been, man? It would be nice to at least know about this. And obviously, it's not your job to inform all of us on what's happening, but you did it at one point. It was really helpful. Senator Warnock apparently supports the Safer Banking Act now, if it has equity attached. The bank CEOs agree with the intent of the bill, but it doesn't change cannabis's illegal status. Interesting watch videos here if you're interested. Now, mainly got a summary from Cannabis Business Times. As U.S. Senator asks 8 banking CEOs if they support Safer Banking Act, 1 raises hand. And this is, again, a very misleading headline. Annoying to see that. But the senator, who was the lone Democrat, and this is just trying to put a spotlight on Raphael Warnock, who is the least interesting man in Congress. But with that, here's what's interesting. The question was, none of you support the Safer Banking Act? Warnock asked. Such a misleading question. Like, it's a yes or no question, really. And it's like, well, it's a lot more complicated than that. And then, of course, Monahan eventually raises his hand halfway while Jamie Dimon lifts his arms slightly with both palms facing up, gesturing as if his answer was more complex than simply a yes or no, because obviously it fucking is. And then the senator, we all support the intent of it, getting cash into the banks. Why wouldn't anyone support that? Less people killed and dispensaries targeted for armed robberies. The problem is it doesn't fix the problem, which is federal prohibition, right? So don't take our non-ascensions, as Monahan said before Warnock cut him off. Let me ask my question, Warnock said. Raise your hand if you believe passing the Safer Banking Act will reduce the racial wealth gap. Has nothing to do with that. It's going to save lives, Raphael. Come on, man. It's just funny. Guy's playing a role, and he's not doing a very good job at it. Full link in the comments if you want to go through that. While from Justin, young Justin, clueless idiot that likes to spectate from the sidelines, but does sometimes chime in with some good takes like this one. So thanks, Justin, for sharing. As of November 30th, 2023, looks like CSE shorts have been closing their positions into the year end. And so I probably should have also opened up shortdata.ca to check that out. But this is according to him, likely using similar data source. Yeah, essentially CSE. And so, well, what he has said could be verified. And so with that, from the Weed CFO, year-to-date weed sales from retail. Since last year, total sales up over $2 billion, which is a 13% gain, despite having both hands tied behind their backs and the federal government not wanting to help in any sort of way. Massachusetts jumped Colorado, and Missouri jumped Arizona, Pennsylvania, Oregon, and Nevada. We'd love to see it. Now, this source is only BDSA analytics. Dataset excludes some states. Washington is the biggest. I'm looking for the raw data on those. If you have it, hit me up. So just want to share. Thank you, Weed CFO, man, for putting this together. You're the man. Appreciate people that share the resources like this. It helps us, paint a picture with what we know and try and compare it to the changing facts and all that, yada, yada. But with that, just wanted to share is Cannabis Benchmarks. It seems like they've also put some data in here. And so I'm going to put this link also in the comments because it seems like they've got some other data that the one above might be lacking. And so that's from Weed CFO. And again, I will share this image here if you just wanted to pause there and take a look. And so with that, from CannaVestments, updated 2023 year-to-date CapEx spend for major public MSOs. While not universal to every operator, the trend of continued capital expenses or expenditures reductions in the U.S. cannabis industry has been notable as capital dried up, companies over-levered, and overall growth slowed. And I believe this is money that you set aside for construction and costs like that every year. Could be wrong, let me know in the comments. But we can see how some companies are either still spending a good amount of CapEx and some certainly spending not much at all. And so quite the list though from Q1 through Q3 and the total thus far and the percentage of the total spent. And with that, from Dennis Rudev, what will it take for cannabis to re-equitize? Source from Viridian. So there's more down here just so that you know if you'd like to grab the link and check it out. But of course you can pause to read, but hey, is SAFER going to finally see the light of day and get passed since it has the votes and the only thing holding it up is schmuck, unfortunately throwing all the American fucking people under the bus? Can't stand that, man. While TerraSend and Curaleaf might be uplisting to the TSX, well, we know TerraSend has already done it. Curaleaf will be joining them. What can that lead to? I don't know, but with that, we've got a cool visual down here. Leverage versus valuation as of November 24th, 2023. Now, there's a chart here with the ticker symbol, the total liability divided by market cap, and then here it says total debt divided by 2024 EBITDA. Some pretty niche finance numbers that I don't fully understand, so I'm not going to try and decipher them for you. Enterprise value divided by 2024 EBITDA, or earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, and then stock issue indicator. Now, whatever all that means, you can grab the full link in the comments, but the main thing to highlight is that there's these two images that are blown up a little bit so that you can see them better. So this one is total debt divided by 2024 EBITDA in the bottom column, while the left one looks at enterprise value divided by 2024 EBITDA. And again, I wish I could decipher this on the go, but I don't necessarily know which spot on this chart represents the best position based on this. So let me know in the comments if you can decipher that, but it's a different chart in the next one. As this one, same left-hand column, enterprise value divided by 2024 EBITDA. However, the bottom is actually looking at total liabilities divided by market cap instead. So it is a different chart. Just wanted to point that out for you all. And again, that source is Viridian Advisors from FactSet and the company's filings from CDAR. And so with that, a few updates from some MSOs just because we've got them and I figured this is the best way to mix them back in. But from Christopher Norman, sharing some thoughts on I think why he thinks Verano is attractive based on some of their footprint in new markets that have just turned on. Now, I'm not invested in Verano and I don't fully know if I understand exactly what he's getting at here, but again, I'm just sharing, so take from it what you will. But Verano per earnings report, which is linked here and that will be linked in the comments, did 19 million in retail and 6 million wholesale through 9 months of 2023. Annual run rate of 33 million with 5 dispensaries. And now I don't know what market he's referring to where they did these numbers, but I think it's based on the Michigan launch. And he's saying based on that, double that sum for adult use in Q2 2024. And so if you are a Verano shareholder, you might want to grab that link in the comments and investigate a little bit more, or if you are interested in investing in Verano. But with that, we've got this one from a Barron's event, I believe, December 6th, Market Watch, legal cannabis in the U.S. gains traction, views by Boris Jordan and chairman of Curaleaf. Now, I haven't watched this yet, but I plan to watch this tonight, possibly. And so anyways, this link will be in the comments, but seems like as much of an up-to-date from one of the industry-leading CEOs, Boris, executive chairman of Curaleaf, as of December 6th, 2 days ago, sharing what he thinks he knows. And again, hey, we know Boris has been wrong in the past from making his calls. He obviously tries to be realistic, but not much you can do when everyone who's telling him stuff kicks the can down the road, right? And so that resource, though, will be in the link in the comments. Will Curaleaf to sell Vermont assets for undisclosed amount? So it seems like they're exiting this market just because, hey, it didn't work out for them, as well as Michigan. So interesting why they're getting out of Michigan. Well, that is such a hot market. Depends on how you're playing it, I guess. Wholesale probably is a big factor. And I know that Curaleaf was trying to do wholesale, so I don't know. But they did note that in its recent MD&A that the Vermont assets were designated as held for sale. I imagine it's because it's not profitable. That would be the only logical reason, really. But with that, a European update, just because I believe in the last week's story, or at least recently, we heard that, oh, maybe Germany will actually get this done, and they've come to some sort of an agreement. But no, Germany further delays final vote on cannabis legalization bill until next year. And so, well, now we know that all the talk is, again, extremely cheap. This can yet again gets kicked down the road, sadly. Well, wanted to share this one out of a publication called ConnexionFrance.com, mainly because it's an article from December 5th, so a few days ago, as medical cannabis gets go-ahead for pain relief in French hospitals. The plant has been granted medicine status for the first time for patients suffering unsupportable pain. Now, unfortunately, this is behind a paywall as well, but just happy to share that it seems like people in France will get access to a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative, and I'm sure that will be huge relief for certain French people that need it. And so with that, from Fox 31 Denver, poll list to Biden reschedule cannabis for 2024. We saw many publications highlight that only 6 governors were really pushing on Biden to get this done, but this highlights the 6 of them. It was Jared Polis from Colorado, Pritzker from Illinois, and I don't know the names of the governors from these states, unfortunately. Louisiana, Maryland, Hochul out of New York, as if she signed on there. New Jersey, I don't even remember that guy's name. Phil something? Where'd he go? Disappeared. But yeah, anyways, if you wanted to read more, basically them just calling on the president to do his fucking job and have the DEA make the announcement to HHS that we've been waiting on for a very long time. So full link in the comments there. Now on to other states' news, as this one from The Hill. Interesting one. Comer signals openness to DC legalizing cannabis sales. And so for those of you not in the know, would be like, oh, well, Washington, DC getting legal sales? Right on. Like, have they not had that for a while? Well, what's funny is that those in DC voted for it in 2014. And what year is it? Yeah, it's 2023, and they still don't have legal adult use sales or legal market. What the politicians have done as a workaround is just made it easy for anyone to apply for medical card, therefore making every cannabis consumer or purchaser in DC a medical patient. That's the workaround, as opposed to actually doing your fucking job and legalizing a commercial market. And so sounds like there's a bit of progress here, but that's all we got so far. And so again, no real update. It's just the fact that this person signals something. Shouldn't even really be news. That's the state of fucking propaganda these days, right? But sorry if I'm contributing to it. With that, MJ Biz Daily, folks, Virginia's legislature's changeover spurs hopes for adult use cannabis sales. And so again, we know that every week I'm basically reporting that there's hopes from Virginia, but still no definitive update. And so this might be the last one for a while until we get a headline that a bill has been introduced in Virginia to actually get cannabis passed. And so lots here, though, if you wanted to pause to read, to learn about what Virginia's been through and what they might want to go through going forward in order to get this going. But I guess likely sponsor might be down here. If anyone's going to make it happen, it seems like it would be one of these folks. And so I invite you to pause to read if you're interested. Otherwise, full link is in the comments. While we've got this one from MJ Biz Daily's, Alabama hands out 20 medical cannabis business licenses on third try. And so after many failed attempts and lawsuits, unfortunately, yet again, it's anything but cannabis really holding this industry up. Regulators have issued 20 medical cannabis business licenses to dispensaries, cultivators, processors, transportation providers, and testing labs. And they're expected to be handed out 28 days after they have been awarded. So medical cannabis production could begin in early January in Alabama. And while I think the only thing missing from here is the actual date that sales could potentially start for medical cannabis here, main thing to highlight is the AMCC has received 38 applications for integrated facilities and can award a maximum of 5 under state law. And here's a breakdown of the license winners. You'll recognize that none of them are MSOs from my understanding, which, hey, fair enough. Give it to local entrepreneurs in Bama. That's the beauty of the 50 states. Well, we got this one from alnews.com. As the plant does what it does when you take the handcuffs off of it, medical cannabis takes off in Mississippi like every other market when you end prohibition and provide access to a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative, but stalls out in Alabama. Unfortunately, we just learned that those licenses are finally being handed out, so that market might get going again. But the fun fact here, it's a long story, and I invite you to grab the link if you want to go through it if you're from Alabama or Mississippi or just want to learn more. But highlighting here, Alabama passed law legalizing med cannabis in May 2020. 2021. Mississippi followed 7 months later in January 2022. Sound familiar? It's kind of like the New Jersey and New York of the South. Today, this dispensary in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, finds itself one out of roughly 100 dispensaries across the state that are already selling while Alabama can't even get their licenses off the ground. And so you can't make this shit up. Some states do it way better than others. And you got to learn from the ones that do it right and avoid making the same mistakes the other ones do. And, one funny thing is that they're laughing at Alabama trying to forbid smokable flower, which is the medicine in itself, the plant, and they're trying to go with THC pills and other extractable medicines. Fair enough, you can do oil, but why forbid flower? Just dumb. And so more here, full link in the comments, so if you want to go through that. Well, from Green Market Report, another market, which is an interesting one, slow rollout of Connecticut's adult use program, starting to spook entrepreneurs. Apparently only 10 adult use cannabis businesses are operational or nearing operation in the state, which is really fucking embarrassing. As of November 1st, the state's online licensing database shows that 55 cannabis companies are waiting for licenses. And so it's not even an issue of the, lack of trying. It's, yet again, politicians, regulations, and it's a blue state, whether you call it socialist policy, communist policy, fascist policy, getting in the way and slowing down natural progress of building things from the ground up by giving entrepreneurs the opportunity to share their business plans, approve them if they're going to make money, give them the loans, and allow them to get to work. Sadly, that's just not happening. As we see in New York and Connecticut, it seems to be the case. So more here if you wanted to pause to read. It's unfortunate because it's just politics getting in the way where it should never get in the way in the first place, sadly. And so from StratCan for the cannabis community, random article, but highlighting that wholesale cannabis prices appear to be rebounding in Canada, that is, according to this. And so just wanted to share a snapshot of it. The average price for dried cannabis flower in October, the most recent data available, was $1.10 per gram, an increase of 6.8% from the September average of $1.03 per gram. So good to see that at least heading up, as obviously the higher value of cannabis, the higher value of everything else dealing with cannabis. But with that, have to share this one from Weekshoe 420, as apparently the U.S. spot index slipped for the second straight week in what may be the beginning of its seasonal decline after an atypical climb through October and much of November, reinforcing the possibility that this month could be the beginning of a longer-term downtrend. Possibly, that's speculation though. It could also be the beginning of what eventually becomes a new bull market, but that's also speculation. So we don't know. However, have to share with you what the facts are. And in grams, the spot price was $2.34 American, decreased 4.3% to $1,062 per pound overall. And so data again comes from CannaBenchmarks as of December 8th. And so lastly, folks, to round it off, we got 3 news stories: the good, the bad, and the ugly, we're going to call them. Firstly, from Marijuana Moment, as veterans groups ask Biden to ensure cannabis scheduling review is completed in timely manner and push for broader reform. All we really want at this point is the DEA to answer the HHS, because we know that has to be done, right? And the DEA is supposed to respond. That's all we can wait on. And we're expecting Schedule 3. Everyone's implying it. And so we all don't know, but this would lead us to believe that something is coming, and timely manner is all we can really fucking hope for. Now, does this mean anything? We want it to, but sadly no, because all these calls to Biden have reaped nothing. Mind you, just wanted to bring you down if you wanted to pause to read, otherwise full link in the story. But of course, they should listen to the veterans, one of the biggest groups in America that has needed cannabis, or at least access to medicinal cannabis, or the plant itself, just the most for the longest time. And so the bad from Marijuana Moment: medical cannabis growers and caregivers can own guns, but patients can't? But patients can't, FBI says in little notice memo. And how blatant this discrimination. It's like, you thought we got past this in the 1960s. How is this still a thing, let alone such an abuse of power from an agency that's been weaponized, sadly, against the American people? Like, time to abolish the FBI. And so obviously this is just horseshit in itself. I'm not going to spend too much time going through it, but if you wanted to try and gather as to why the FBI wants to categorize a cannabis user as an unlawful user and someone that cannot buy or possess a gun, absolute horseshit. So make sure you go load up, folks. And so lastly, the ugly. Marijuana Moment: DEA threatens Georgia pharmacies over dispensing medical cannabis under state law. Well, make up your fucking minds. Are you going to go after them, which should technically be illegal right now because of the Cole memo, and I don't know if that's still in place, but the fact that Garland even said you cannot go after medical operators. And so what are you doing, DEA? We're waiting on you to respond to HHS. Why the fuck are you making threats to Georgia when, all we're waiting on is for you to answer the HHS? Kind of fucked up, because they want to waste their time doing this And we think that they're going to agree with HHS moving into Schedule 3, if HHS even followed the science. So the more time goes on, the more skeptical I kind of become. But hey, my skin's in the game. I'm not giving up, folks. Again, time is on our side. This is just horseshit. I'm pissed seeing this. And it's just more incompetence and blatant disrespect, and abuse of power from American agencies. Another reason to abolish the DEA. It's fucking stupid. But this is their guidance to pharmacies on the dispensing of certain tetrahydrocannabinols. And again, after looking at all the studies that I've shared and seeing all of the medical value and potential benefits that THC provides, the only thing you can really be certain of is the fact that THC is still in the Schedule 1 when HHS has had a patent since 2003. It's just straight criminal what the government is doing, and THC must be really a wonder compound. It's really the only conclusion we can logically derive from all this. And so I wanted to share this to end it off because I thought it was funny, but at this point it's not even funny anymore. But that makes it kind of funny still. Connoisseurs.io, even Grok has lost faith in Senator Schumer's promises on cannabis reform. I mean, hard to rely on an AI tool to be optimistic at all, much like we are, and actively connecting all these dots for so many years. But yeah, hey, it's out of our control. Plan accordingly for your own situation, folks. But at some point from now until the end of the year, we should hear from the DEA. If we don't hear anything from the DEA after Christmas and shit, then I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think we have to do at that point. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of today's stories? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you next week for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.